Thank you, Brianna. Thanks to all of you for being here today for this announcement. We appreciate it. I'm joined, of course, by Governor Jay Inslee, who will be speaking after me. I'll be introducing him shortly. Also joined by Jorge Barron, Executive Director of the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. And he'll also be having an announcement on behalf of his organization. And following Jorge, Michelle Storms from the ACLU. So there'll be 4 speakers, then we'll take your questions. We also appreciate the many representatives from different offices of members of Congress here in Washington State and their tremendous support. I've been in regular contact with them and Pramila Jayapal in particular, and we really appreciate all of their support. We're here today to announce that Washington State will be leading a coalition of states in filing a lawsuit challenging President Donald Trump's family separation policy. We'll be filing that lawsuit imminently here in Seattle, in the Western District of Washington. Jorge Barron will be also, his organization will also be filing a lawsuit. It's been a close partnership, as you can imagine, with Jorge and his team and the ACLU, and they'll speak to their case as well. So I'm going to take you briefly through the process before I turn it over. And before I do that, though, I do want to thank, there's a number of members of my team who are here today. They've been working extremely hard for many, many days now, even a few weeks now, on this issue, putting a lot of weekends and a lot of hours. Noah Purcell, my Solicitor General, who you all know, Colleen Melody to my left, who you all know, the head of my civil rights team. Also joined by Laura Clinton. Laura and I actually worked at a law firm many, many years ago. She recently left a very good private practice to join the AG's team, so we put her right to work on this big case. Becca Glasgow has played a key role in this case. Kelly Paradis, Andrea Brennicke has played a key role along with Megan Lynn, investigator Alma Paletti, and paralegal Jenna Williams. There's many more, but I just want to give you a sense. There's a lot of faces, a lot of folks. To put together a case of this magnitude with a coalition of many, many states takes an awful lot of work. I'll give you a little bit of background. We started looking at a potential case last month in May when reports first started coming out about this policy. That work accelerated significantly once we learned that Washington State had many parents and even children here as a result of that policy. In fact, we learned that ICE had sent 174 women to our state right at the facility located behind us. That's the Federal Detention Center, as you know, in SeaTac, Washington, part of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It's a jail. The team was inside this facility just yesterday, spent hours interviewing dozens of individuals there. We just were chatting just before this. I mean, the president likes to dehumanize these folks who are seeking asylum in our country. And as the team mentioned, look, in every one of those conversations, you realize the heartbreak that's going on. I think the team said I could share that there wasn't really a dry eye in the room as a result of those many conversations. So there were dozens of conversations that took place yesterday. We learned, however, shortly before we arrived that ICE apparently moved many of those individuals to the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma, so some folks are there now. The team talked to a mom, for example, who brought her 8-year-old son to the United States to seek asylum because they'd both received death threats in El Salvador from a violent gang. She sought refuge here in the United States, along with her child. Instead of finding a refuge here, of course, her child was taken away from her. She last saw her child 31 days ago, has no idea where he is, who is taking care of him, or whether or not he is safe. Other mothers reported being separated from their children being as young as 6. Even the parents who have spoken to their children cannot do so regularly and don't have details about what will happen to them. We've also spoken to some of the children who are here in Washington State as a result of the Trump administration's policy. It is our understanding that they are not related to any of the individuals, the parents who are here. We'd originally planned on having this press conference. We've been in touch with the governor, Jorge, and his team. We planned a few days ago to have a press announcement challenging this policy. Of course, yesterday's announcement on this executive order from the president caused us to take some time to review that executive order to see if we were still going to follow through with the complaint. But we literally had the complaint drafted in the past few days, moving forward to a press conference today. We took a look at that executive order, and that executive order came out minutes after my team left this facility after interviewing many folks. We believe that a lawsuit is still necessary because there are still two main problems with that executive order as it relates to this outrageous policy. First, the policy is not grandfathered. In other words, as is now becoming reported, it does not apply to the kids like those here in Washington State who have already been separated from their parents. Those individuals are not included in the President's executive order. Second, the executive order is riddled with so many caveats that it essentially makes it meaningless. And I'll give you a couple examples. First, it requires appropriations from Congress, presumably. And we have no idea if or when those appropriations will happen or even what amount is needed. Moreover, it requires a judge to find that it's okay to detain kids indefinitely, and we do not think a judge is going to do that. The order requests that a judge overturn what's known as the Flores settlement. You've probably read a lot about this. It says you cannot detain children for more than 20 days. We do not think a judge is going to be willing to significantly alter that settlement. My team is now in the process of adjusting our complaint as a result of the executive order. We anticipate that will take a little bit of time. We will not be filing today, but it will be imminently that we'll be filing this litigation. We'll allege that the administration has violated the constitutional due process rights of the parents and children by separating them as a matter of course and without any findings that the parent poses a threat to the children. The policy is also irrationally discriminatory in violation of the constitutional guarantees of equal protection because it only targets people crossing our southern border, not any other entrance to the United States. We'll also argue this policy once again violates the Administrative Procedure Act because it's arbitrary and capricious. The APA, the Administrative Procedure Act, is an act that we have utilized over and over again in our successful challenges to this administration, and that the administration has been violating U.S. asylum laws by turning away people at our ports of entry. We're asking the President, again, to comply with the law and the Constitution. This will be our 27th lawsuit against the Trump administration. As many of you know, we've not lost a case yet. Washington State, I'm proud to say, was the first state to challenge this president more than a year ago for that first travel ban. We were successful in that litigation. There are a number of other states who are joining, and we expect additional ones to join. So far, the initial list we have that we can identify who will be joining this litigation when we file it include Massachusetts, California, Maryland, Oregon, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota. We anticipate additional states may be joining us as well. I'll have a final comment before we take your questions, but first I'm going to turn this over to Governor Jay Inslee. Look, I just want to say, I am very thankful that we as a state and I as an Attorney General have a governor who has been such a leader on standing up for what we would consider to be basic civil rights and protections for the people of our state against this administration. He's been helpful in all the litigation that we have against this president. I would just say, on a personal note, I think on this litigation, he's been especially helpful and encouraging, and my team and I really appreciate his leadership and his support for the important work that we do as a state of Washington. So with that, please welcome Governor Jay Inslee.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
Thank you. If we can defer for a minute for our CTAC friends. I'd like to start by thanking Bob and all of the Assistant Attorney Generals. It's notable that yet again Washington State is leading the nation, and Bob's team is leading a team of Attorney Generals across the United States. And they are determined to succeed in this principle. The United States Constitution is going to outlast and outfight Donald Trump. And the United States Constitution is going to be enduring after he is a blip in history. And we yet again are making sure that is the case, because we're making sure that the lessons we've learned about the inhumanity in the White House are learned well, and these are these. We're going to make sure that his cruelty is outmatched by our compassion. We're going to make sure that his chaos is overcome by the U.S. Constitution. And we're going to make sure that the den of deceit that is now at large in the White House is overcome by our insistence that the President of the United States stop lying to the American people. And we are going to succeed in this effort. Now, we teach our children not to bully each other in the schools of the state of Washington. And we've got great teachers doing that, and Kim's leading that effort. I'm here to say that we should not, we must not, and we will not be bullied by this president. We are going to stand up for the constitutional principles that apply to people in this nation. And one of those is the right to seek asylum. Donald Trump has said that this country is infested with people. Well, in fact, the White House is infested with deceit. These are people who are the victims of gangs. They're not necessarily gang members. They're women who've been gang raped. They're women whose children who's been threatened to be murdered. And they have a legal right to simply have their day in court to seek asylum. And I want to thank the legislators here today who helped appropriate money that's going to Jorge's group so that they can have a right to have their day in court. A good thing that the state of Washington did. I want to thank them. Now, I want to say, as governor of the state of Washington, I am so disappointed at this president and not being a partner to try to deal with this challenge. I am disappointed that Bob and I have asked legitimate questions in writing now twice. Simple questions of where are these children? Simple questions, where are their parents? Simple questions, how will they communicate? And they have refused to answer the governor and the attorney general of the state of Washington. When they refuse to be civil, we have no other opportunity but to go to court to enforce the request that we have some organized situation, and all we have is chaos this morning. No one knows what this administration is doing today because they don't know what they're doing today. These people could not run a two-car funeral, and as a result, we have chaos today, and we're here in court. And I want to make clear, I'm proud that the executive branch is joining the Attorney General. We're working together. Our Department of Social and Health Service has been out to interview these 9 children. We have looked at their conditions. And I want to say it doesn't matter how good their physical conditions are, their emotional condition is they have been tortured, because the separation from your parents is torture. Child boarding is as bad as waterboarding. And we've made sure they have physical security, but they have nothing but emotional insecurity. So I'm glad to say that Americans have spoken out. I'm glad to say that when we speak out, we now know that Donald Trump can fold like a cheap suit, but I'm glad that we're going to enforce our constitutional rights in court. Now I want to add on this one comment. Bob talked about the necessity of us seeking judicial protection here because of all the loopholes. But there's another reason we need to be in court on this, and that is you simply cannot trust the president on anything. This piece of paper he held up is meaningless because we are one tweet away from disaster. We are one tweet away from totally reversing these policies. And we've seen this over the last week. It's really sorry to have to say this. The president lied about what he did here. The president lied about why he did what he did. The president lied about what he did. And the president lied when he said he couldn't fix this problem, that then yesterday he held up a pen that showed he could. We must insist on judicial protection for these children and the U.S. Constitution. I'm glad we're doing it. Now we've got Jorge Barón, a great leader of the Northwest Immigrant Rights Organization. I'm glad we'll be working in tandem on this case. Jorge.
Thank you, Governor. I first just want to say how proud I am as a Washingtonian to have leaders like Governor Inslee and our Attorney General Bob Ferguson leading the fight, and particularly the team that the AG's office has here. I wanted to announce that we've been coordinating with the Attorney General on the legal options, and our organization, the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, will be filing a lawsuit on behalf of the parents because legally we can bring different challenges filing by the parents directly who are detained. And I want to make sure that people understand, because I know the headlines yesterday seemed to suggest to a lot of people that family separation was no longer happening. And I want to tell you that this morning I took a call from one of our clients who's detained at the right behind us, who's still right there as we speak who's separated from her child. And she's still there, and her child is still far away from her. We've completed now, I can update you that we've completed now 155 screenings of the 200 people who have been brought up here who are asylum seekers. We know there's at least 45 parents who are separated. Some of them, as Attorney General Ferguson indicated, have been transferred now to the Northwest Detention Center. And they're still separated from their children. And so family separation has not ended. And that is why we're ready to continue the legal fight until those parents are together with their children, and to make sure that they are released from detention and they have the opportunity to go to court. One of the things that will be challenging in our case is that they haven't been provided the opportunity to even have the initial screening for the asylum case. They've been detained for over a month, and that hasn't happened yet. So we stand ready to continue the work. We're proud also to partner with our colleagues at the ACLU of Washington who have led this fight as well, and the work at the national level on fighting against this policy. But this is going to require, as we've seen, a concerted effort at every level and in different fronts to make sure that the parents who are currently behind me, who are separated from their children, are reunited, that they're released from detention, and that continue, as I've indicated in the past, not only the parents, but the rest of the asylum seekers who've come here to seek protection and have been thrown behind bars by this administration. So I look forward to continuing the fight with our partners here at the state level, and I'm now pleased to introduce Michelle Storms, the Deputy Director of the ACLU of Washington.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to just reemphasize that what is happening now is not only cruel and inhumane, but also unconstitutional. We are in a humanitarian crisis, which we will still be in until these families are reunited and are free. The ACLU began a case in February of this year addressing the forcible separation of parents and children in a case called Ms. L. And in that case, the government did attempt to dismiss the case, but did not succeed in doing so. The plaintiff was an asylum-seeking mother along with her 7-year-old child from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they were coming here to seek refuge from extreme violence. Instead, they were separated, and for some period of time, you've heard about, they did not have access to each other. The mother did not know where her child was. They have been reunited, but the suit continues because we are asking for the court to make this class nationwide so that we can address the problems of all of the parents and children who are separated from each other. So we are seeking a preliminary injunction that would have impact across the country. I also want to just briefly emphasize what has already been brought up about the executive order. It does not solve the problems. It does not reunite the families that are currently separated. It does not provide a path for that to happen. And in fact, still families who are coming across the border could be held indefinitely, even if they are together. And a third thing that concerned us as well very much was the fact that it created a space for construction of new facilities to hold these families together, which for us raised the horror of the specter of internment camps. And for these families who are already escaping terror, it is the creation of more terror in their lives. So in short, the ACLU is really proud to work with our allies and partners to uphold the Constitution. We're so proud of our state and of all the people who are working so hard, because we do not have justice. The promise of justice for all is not realized until these families are together again. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, Jorge, and Governor Inslee. Just a final thought, then we'll take your questions. Look, in the past year and a half, I've had a lot of time to think about this administration, primarily through a legal lens, and the now 27 lawsuits we filed against the administration. One thing I've come to appreciate is that each of these lawsuits are about multiple things. One thing they're all about, of course, is the rule of law, right? That everybody's accountable to the rule of law, even the president. And we said that at our first press conference on the first travel ban a year and a half ago. It's also, of course, about the people who are impacted by these policies that come down from this administration. People's lives are impacted in very significant ways, deeply personal ways, even whether or not they can be united as a family, that level of impact. And third, I've come to appreciate how much each of these cases, what they say about who we are as a people. And yes, it's a lawsuit, and yes, we're citing cases, but it is about who we are as a people. You know, do we truly lack the decency that we're seeing being expressed by this administration? I mean, truly, where is the decency? You know, sometimes there are not words to express it. What I can say as a parent, right, of 10-year-old twins, every parent can appreciate if you're at a park with your kids and you lose sight of them. You can't find them. They've wandered off. That moment of panic you have, maybe it lasts 15 seconds, maybe a minute, maybe 5 minutes. It feels like hours, right? That feeling of panic. Where is my child? Is my child safe? I suspect most parents have had that experience at least once. I cannot imagine, having had that experience myself, what it would be like for a parent to have that feeling day after day, week after week, under these circumstances. That truly is unimaginable. And look, you know, more and more as my kids get older, they're 10-year-old twins, I try to talk a little about these cases with them. This is one where they truly, when I try to explain what our government is doing of taking parents and separating them from their children, where the parents don't know where the kids are or if they're safe, they truly cannot wrap their minds around that. They don't have an orientation for that, right? They cannot wrap their minds around that concept. Look, you know, sometimes kids can see things very clearly, and they certainly do in this situation. My legal team with the ACLU, with Jorge and his team, with the governor, and with other states around this country are going to fight this issue until we once again prevail in the courts. Thank you, and we look forward to taking your questions. Yes, go right ahead. And we'll do our best to repeat the question so folks can hear it. So to paraphrase the question is there sort of a rhyme or reason to why parents are here and the children are somewhere else and the kids aren't connected in this state to the parents that are here? And is there a rationale behind that? The government may want to speak to that as well, but we're not aware of a rationale for that, right? Why kids are being transported thousands of miles away from their parents. I think that's up to the administration to explain what possible rationale they would have for that.
Let me add
Yeah,
something to that.
Governor, go ahead, yeah.
Look, when you ask why the administration would scatter these children to the four winds with no plan for reunification for their children, yeah, there's a rationale for it. It is an evil rationale to terrorize these families. People need to understand this was not an accidental infliction of child abuse. It was intentional. It was intentional to try to disturb and cause fear and anxiety. I just read an account the other day that when they pried some child away from their mother, she said, make sure you tell everybody back home that we're going to do this to everybody else. This was intentional to try to cause anxiety and fear in these children. This was a desire to punish these children for the sins of a U.S. Congress who won't do comprehensive immigration reform. And it's wrong. So yeah, there's a reason for it, and it's not a pretty picture. And right today, as I stand here, I got to tell you, so Bob and I have asked a simple question. Where are the parents of the 9 children that are in the state of Washington so that we can work on the reunification? They've refused to answer to the governor and the attorney general. You can't think that you've got somebody working in good faith when that happens.
Sure, so I may have Noah or Colleen may jump in as well. So 2 questions, I'll maybe address them in reverse order. One, hey, Congress is looking at potential laws to address this. If they do, how they impact the lawsuit. A couple quick thoughts. One, we'd have to see it once it's adopted. Number 2, I'm skeptical that Congress will truly be able to address this, just given the history of Congress on dealing with any issue related to immigration. And I think the first question related to, I think hopefully no one calling her as well, I think it asked, are we directly attacking the zero tolerance policy in our lawsuit? Noah, do you want to maybe speak to that?
Sure.
Sorry, Governor.
We recognize that the federal government has a lot of discretion in how they enforce immigration laws and who they want to prosecute and who they don't. There are policy issues there that are terrible, but the legal issue really is what do they do regardless of, even if they choose to prosecute these people, they don't need to separate the families the way that they're doing, and they certainly don't need to turn people away at the border who are doing what they're supposed to do when they seek asylum. There are so many stories of people now who've gone to the border, to a point of entry, the right place to go to ask for asylum. We're told, no, we're full, and then forced basically to go down the road and try to sneak across. And then they're prosecuted, so it's like a manufactured prosecution that then leads to their children being separated. So we're not saying that the federal government can't prosecute any of these people. It's a question of what happens to the children when they're being detained basically solely for immigration violations, and are they kept together, and how long until they're released. So they do have, we acknowledge that they have some discretion, but not what they're doing right now is unconstitutional, violates statutes and just basic constitutional principles about trying to keep families together.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, Jorge.
Sorry. So one thing that I wanted to add is we know of at least one of the parents who is separated from their children who came to a port of entry. So I think it's important to understand that, like, the administration has been trying to justify this in the sense of the criminal prosecutions, but we have seen parents who have gone to the port of entry, so did what the administration have asked them to do and applied for asylum, and then they were separated from their children. We have seen cases where the parent actually wasn't prosecuted. I guess that was, they missed it. And so they weren't prosecuted. They still got separated from the children. So I think it's really important to understand that this is happening. This was the policy of separation was sort of covered up by this idea of the criminal prosecution, because when our clients went before the federal judge in the southern border, they were told, you've served your time. You're done with that case. And they thought, and I talked to one of the public defenders down there who said, I think the judge also thought they were going to be reunited with their children. And so everybody was under the impression that after that criminal case was done, they were going to be reunited with their children, but that hasn't happened. And people have been detained for over a month after that, and they have not been separated. I also want to address the question about the rationale of where people get detained. We know the parents that are here have children in Florida, New York, Texas, Arizona. And probably other states that we haven't identified yet. So there is no rationale. This was just scattershot on the administration. Besides, I agree with the governor that the policy was intentional, but the implementation was chaotic.
Noah was just saying that what matters is how you do. It's not that the government doesn't have discretion, but what happens afterward, how they go about it. How could the government go about it if it wanted to prosecute those people? How could it go about it?
So the question is, I'll repeat it, is how could the administration conduct this in a constitutional way? I'll make an initial comment, then ask Colleen or Noah to add to it. First, I'm sometimes asked that when we file a lawsuit challenging the administration, hey, what could the administration do to be compliant with the law? That's not our job, right? Our job is to point out where they're failing on the law, failing on the Constitution. That's not our job. It's the president's job to follow the law when enacting policies. That said, past administrations, both Republican and Democratic, have move forward with various processes that have allowed for these criminal matters and asylum seekers to be processed. Noah or Colleen, do you want to add anything more on whether or not what they could do specifically to comply with the law? Don't feel like you have to yet.
Yeah. Sure.
This is Colleen Melody.
So there are a variety of options that are lawful and that other administrations have used. The first thing that they need to do to comply with the law is allow people to seek asylum, which is a requirement of federal law and international law that we permit those applications. So not manufacturing this sort of surge in illegal entrants when it's really people that had tried to do the right thing, the thing we've told them to do and asked them to do. But after that, if they want to prosecute people who have broken the law, according to the government, then there are lots of options to keep families together while those processes proceed. Make sure that children are not detained any longer than they absolutely have to be, and that families are kept together and not separated while that process goes on. There are lots of ways to keep track of people while they go through their criminal processes, check-ins, bail, sort of monitoring devices, lots of options that can be used to avoid the unconstitutional, illegal, worst option that the administration has chosen.
So I'll repeat and let you guys speak to that, 'cause that's things are developing as we speak on that. So the question is, how does our suit navigate, or how is it related to or connected with the Flores decision? Is that basically it?
Because that would mandate that families who are detained, the child can't be in the detention.
Correct. Can you guys speak to that?
Sure. Do you want to do it first? Or?
Largely the same answer.
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, as Colleen said, there are a number of options, including the ways of tracking people that the government can certainly release, unless they have some reason to think that the parent is a danger. They can release the families together and use monitoring devices, use bail, use other mechanisms to keep track of where people are. Past administrations have complied with the Flores case and still managed to keep track of people and not separate families intentionally. And as Jorge Barón said, I mean, part of what's so troubling about this whole policy is that they seem to just be applying it willy-nilly, even to people who aren't prosecuted. There's no rhyme or reason it's just the intentional separation of families as a deterrence mechanism, as the governor was saying, as Attorney General Ferguson was saying. There's no clear connection even to their so-called zero tolerance. It's just aimed at scaring people. So we think there are definitely ways they can comply.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you need to think about what's happened in the last few days, and that is Donald Trump's propaganda campaign has failed, and he is engaged in a propaganda campaign. He's engaged in multiple deceit and deception and outright lies, because he basically has tried to say these are the people who are behind me, sort of all belong to M13. They're all in M13. We're infested with gang members. Well, the M stands for mother in this case. And his propaganda effort has failed when Americans have seen the tumult and the torture he's caused to these children. Now, I'm glad his propaganda measure failed, but this lawsuit's going to make sure that it fails yet again in a judicial decree. And we have to be alert to that propaganda. Look, this is not just a personal flaw of the individual in the White House. It is a concerted strategy of using the power of the national government in propaganda to try to convince some people simply that's not true. These are mothers behind us. They're not M13 members. What a bunch of hooey. And they've got all kinds of alternatives to protect our security while also honoring the Constitution. And we're going to do both.
Can you confirm, are there any parents still there? Like, are all of them been transferred to Tacoma? And what do you make of the transfer? Is that positive?
Repeat the question.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, yeah.
So the question was about, are there still parents detained behind me, and what do we know about the transfers to the Northwest Detention Center, whether that's a good sign? So what we know is that we've talked to 45 parents. We understand that there are approximately 35 that were transferred to the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma yesterday. So we think that there are still 10 here. At least, because we haven't completed all the screenings. I can tell you that, I spoke to one of them this morning, like 2 hours ago, and I know she was still here. So in terms of whether transferring to the Northwest Detention Center is a good thing, I will tell you that I'm a little torn about it. I haven't had a chance to talk to any of the clients that were transferred yesterday, but they had told me that they had previously been held before they were transferred here at a privately run immigration detention center in Texas, one of these that are run by private contractors, just like the Northwest Detention Center is. And they had expressed that they were treated much worse down there because, and that's consistent with the experience that has been reported over and over about experiences at private contract detention centers. So while I can't tell you right now for those people how they feel about the transfer, I'm concerned because we've seen that the experiences in private immigration detention centers are pretty troubling for people there. I will say that the one thing that I will add on that point too is that I also want to mention that we have been able to now, all 45 parents do have legal representation or have been assigned volunteer attorneys to continue advocating for them.
Are there also people who are not parents who have been transferred to
Yeah, the question was whether we know if there are any non-parents who have been transferred to the Northwest Detention Center, and we do understand that a handful of people have been transferred as well who are not parents.
Yeah. So we'll make this the last question, then, but we'll be around to take additional questions one-on-one. The question is, well, when do we plan on filing? Is that today? What is imminent? It will not be today. The original plan was to file today. We had a complaint ready. The executive order caused us appropriately to pause and review that executive order, and also to reach back out to the states that are interested. That just takes some time. So it won't be today, but it'll be within the next couple business days. We'll be filing very soon. It is just a bit of a process working with a lot of other states who want to be involved, and they have to make adjustments as well. So there's just a bit of a process when you're leading a group of states as we are, but imminently is coming in the next couple business days. And just a final thought, and then we'll take your questions informally afterwards. Thanks again to the governor, ACLU, Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, the legislators, the organizations that are here. You know, one thing we've learned through this process the last year and a half is it takes a team effort to bring these legal challenges. There's a lot of conversations, a ton of legal work going on here in Washington State and with other states and organizations. I appreciate the work that everybody does. You know, I think I mentioned before, you know, we have not lost a case yet. It's a lot of litigation for not having lost a case yet. I want to be clear about that, okay? Filed 26 lawsuits. These are all contested. We're 9-0. You know, we are going to do our best on this case. I don't plan on starting a losing streak with this case. A lot's on the line. In every case, a lot's on the line, but my God, right? A lot's on the line. The team knows that. Everybody here appreciates that, and we'll be working as hard as we can to get the outcome that these individuals deserve, and frankly, that our Constitution deserves as well. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.